Welcome back, everyone. 皆さん、お帰りなさい。今日は、54日目です。It is day 54. We are in the aftermath of peak day and the fallout, right? And the fallout today, we have quite a few mistakes to review. And we'll hop into our, looks like 200-ish reviews. Yesterday was about 2 hours, right? We'll see how well it goes today. So this one, Uchi. Uchi is to miss, right? A whisper in the ear. So, oop. This one, ha, right? Ha. Hairu. To grow. Hairu. This one, to spread out. That's a definition problem. This one, Kyoku. Kyoku. This one, kunyomi, right? Double kun. Oop. Yikes. Oops. Wrong character. Right. Hayakuchi. Kutsa. Kuchi. Oops. Erakuchi. Hayakuchi. This one was... It's kind of a mixed bag, but toll. No rendaku. So this was a tama problem. Ho. Hoku instead of haku. And this one was iru instead of hairu. Right. We'll get into our reviews now. Hey. Buta. Imasugu. Imasugu. I think it was like imasugu. All at once is what I would write off the top of my head. At once, immediately. I think immediately is acceptable. Imasugu. What else could it be? You have a bunch of like first off. What was first off? I think immediately is fine. Or were the others? At once, right now, right away. Okay, all at once doesn't really work. Okay. Tateru. Just stand something up. Huh. Coming from Tatsu. But not taco. If you're gonna stand something up, I guess there's what was the Tatsu? What's the Tatsu mnemonic? This is just gonna go.
立てる
Video. Was there anything? No, it's from Tatsu. I don't know what the Tatsu one is either. Okay.
Imasugu.
Masuku.
Iniku.
Niku. Oh.
Hashiru.
Hashiru.
年上
Toshiue.
Seinen.
Seinen. Konbanwa, Gyako-san. Are you feeling better?
Taira.
Aida. Gaknen.
学年
Gakunen. Okay. Oh, which by the way, Gecko, I didn't know if I shared this. 98%? I'll take it. Passing grade. The day that I started Yakuza, right? Pirate Yakuza was also the day that I received the Radical Yakuza. Like 2 days ago was the day I received Yakuza. Interestingly enough. What a weird coincidence, huh? Of all the things.
大学
Daigaku.
わかる
Wakaru. Sometimes the star aligns, and now you'll never forget the Yakuza radical. Yeah, probably not. So how's Pirate Yakuza going so far? It is cutting into my sleep. It's very cutting into my sleep. But yeah, it's the trappings, right? If there's any game that makes it feel like you constantly come back to, and you know, okay, oh, I have a metaphor for Pirate Yakuza. Remember Ireland, Gecko? It's like going to Ireland every 1 or 2 years. You lose a lot of sleep, but you wouldn't spend that time any other way. You're exhausted, but then you step out and you realize you're full of energy again. And you go to bed exhausted every day with a smile on your face. How's that? We gotta use some of the stuff. We gotta use some of the details that you shared with me. Sure sounds nice when you put it that way. How about Civilization? Do you have that same experience with Civilization? I keep forgetting the number. 6? 7? Was it like that for you? It's been what? 3, 4 years? 5 years maybe? Does it feel like does it feel slightly different, like time has moved on, but you have the kindlings and nostalgia mixed with all the new things, and that fondness that gets rekindled but in a new package? That's kind of how I was describing Pirate Yakuza. It's one of those things you get to do, and I feel the same way later this year when I go and I'll volunteer at Otakon. So you don't have lots of those moments in life sometimes, right? Okay. MAKU.
Kaisha.
よいしょ。
何年。
何年。
肉。
会う
お。
賛成
賛成。
何日。
何日。
産む
産む。
生える。
生える。
気に入る
気に入る。 It's already been over 8 years since Civilization 6 launch, believe it or not. Wow, I now have 2 games of Civilization 7 under your belt so far, around 25 hours probably. Oh, that's double the amount of time I have with Yakuza Pirate so far. Yeah, mixed feelings at this point. I see. Mixed feelings. Give me a tentative mix. Something from column A and something from column B, if you will. While I figure out the loiter thing, right? So you loiter, poop. Okay, so they want it behind. Civ games at launch tend to be a little rough, but it's going to improve over time. You have no doubt about it. Absolutely. However, you're still unsure how you feel about some of the major changes. Intriguing. What's from column A and what's from column B at the moment? I am actually familiar with all the changes, all the major changes. From a knowledge standpoint. Not sure how they would feel, but from a knowledge standpoint.
休学
上がる
Oh, literature. Whoops. I didn't look at that carefully. Does Earth work? Ground, Earth.
Bungaku.
音楽。
止まる
止まる。Wait. Was this Holy Whisper? Oh. This was Take, wasn't it? Why do I think this was Take? Oh, the ear on the... Whoops. I'm confusing it with the vocab that I was supposed to remember today. It's part of it, but... Not the correct thought. For one, it feels very streamlined, which can be good sometimes, but some mechanics feel oversimplified and therefore not very interesting. Oh. As for the age changes and the civ changes, you feel like you like the idea more than the execution? That sounds like a negative and a neutral negative. I see. This one was, oh. This was what I was confused. I was thinking about. And then I already thought about take at first for this one. Hiking?
Daikin.
Hiking.
見える。
見える。
できる。
できる。Be visible. Yeah, that's fine. You win. You win, WaniKani. Oops.
年下。
下。Oh, right. It's
出社。
出社。
耳打ち。
耳打ち。Switching civilizations does take some of the immersion away. Interesting. For the positives, you like combat, the new army commanders. I thought that was a great way to streamline that. Yeah, a nice way to stream and add, actually streamline something and then adding a little bit of different depth to combat. The AI is pretty bad, but it's never been great in previous games. Yeah, I mean, let's just, like, at the moment we have LLMs, right? Like, let's talk about consumer AI and then talk about how applying that consumer AI to games while having user interactions. Like, yeah, I mean, Civilization. I'm gonna be real. If you think about it, all the individuals who do not play Civilization, imagine what their pattern of playing would be like compared to the AI. I find that's a very sobering thought when it comes to like your expectations of AI behavior, if you know what I mean. Like, we take the baseline average aptitude of someone who is not trained to play a game as a basis and then go from there. And I would say sometimes when you crank it up, AI kind of just feels like they're cheating. I don't know if you feel like that way sometimes, but I still remember in Civ 5 when you have to do certain tasks, I'm like, dude, just let me do it. But yeah, anyways, yeah, that's understandable. Civilization is a very complicated game. I mean, personally, I still don't necessarily understand all the nuances of older Civilization games. That's interesting that you say the Civ switching civilizations take you out of the immersion. When I was looking at the description, how it was working, it's kind of interesting because I have a different type of immersion for that type. Because age switching suggests I guess you're talking about like the continuity, right? The continuity causes an immersion break. While at the same time, my thought was, I like the idea that those periods are forced upon everyone, largely because it produces that semblance, if not intentional, right? I don't think it's intentional, but it creates this poetic capture of how the world is reactive to each other. So when suddenly an age persists forward, now hear me out. The other way can be argued too, but in this way, if you're already interacting with a civilization, having a sudden shift in age because everyone else did is kind of the thing you're realistically expecting. However, I can definitely see it as like, but what happened to all the time in between, right? Yeah, as a like a mechanic, as a immersion thing, not a mechanic thing. Asians have positives, and you like that they are all slightly different objectives and mechanics. However, it does feel like 3 mini games in a way. Well, hot dog, that sounds like my kind of jam. You wrote however, so that's probably where we differ. But yeah, I have great fondness with adherence to modularity within games within games. It lines up with a lot of circuit making. It's interesting that when you're playing Civilization, you think of it as a whole. Or you desire it to be as a whole. I might be reading too much into your however. That's because Pirate Yakuza is quite the opposite. It's a game designed specifically with that philosophy in mind. And I kind of find life to be very much like that, or skill building to be very much like that. Now, they can be very disjointed, but largely maybe because I'm not immersed, you find the connections yourself.
Tsukuru.
Taiki. Nangatsu. Kazan.
When you play, you always identify more with the civ than the leader. For example, I would say I'm playing as Rome, not I'm playing as Augustus. So you have to change your mindset. That's an interesting thought. So, are you suggesting that this game is more identifiable by the leader as opposed to... Oh, I can kind of see that. Yeah, by their directional change. The two main issues with ages are one, they feel abrupt. That's understandable. Mechanics first before immersion. For example, you're in the middle of a big high scale war and suddenly it all stops, or one turn away from a 1 turn away from wonder, and 2, anything you do towards the end of an age feels like it doesn't really matter. Oh, okay. Yeah, that seems like a mechanical. Yeah, I can kind of see they will have to address that smoothness. In terms of eruptness, I feel the closest analogy I can think about, you do keep the same leader throughout the whole game. I see. Do you not in previous civilizations? For the middle of big scale war and suddenly it all stops, I believe that is something. If I had an analogy for that, it's kind of like what's a good example? I don't know. Frostpunk is probably not the best example, but let's say like the game of Risk, right? Or actually, um it's not as big a scale. Perhaps they can scale back the eruptness. Lots of games have these called catastrophic events, right? And an age change is a paradigm shift. So yes, wars do suddenly stop, and wonders do suddenly stop, and the whole like poetic nature of sudden paradigm shifts is that everything gets dropped. And in my opinion, that is a mixed bag for a lot of people, especially games that are built on the expectation of legacy and completion, right? Do wonders ever start and abruptly stop due to a paradigm shift? Absolutely. Do wars suddenly stop when there's a paradigm shift? Absolutely. Now, from a mechanical standpoint, like from a video game mechanical standpoint, yeah, that can be very jarring and unrewarding, considering that your gamer, right? The gamer wants to complete the stuff, right? As opposed to playing damage control. There are games that do take that design standpoint, and obviously the gamer themselves adjust to it themselves. Basically, they determine when, like, okay, you know what, I'm not going to make it in time to cut my losses and prepare for the age change, right? That kind of thing, preparatory normalization. So I'm not entirely sure if I find it a negative or positive, but more of a preparatory behavior difference. Things start and they often do not get completed, especially when it comes to major decisions like that. Yes, it's always been the case that you keep the same leader in Civ for the whole game. Now you switch civs, but not leader. In civs. Oh, okay. I see. As for civilization mixing, picking any civilization with any leader, you kind of like it. It's more options. I expect more leaders and civilizations to come out over time, which will increase. That is the business model. Yep. Reading into the structure of the way they streamline Civilization 7, it makes it into a showcase game, as opposed to a structure that deals with coupling, right? So I think Sid Meier's game line of Civilization games is moving to a showcase format. And a showcase format has like lots of design and profitability concerns that are nice for the game. It allows them to roll out more leaders and more civilization combinations. Well, every modular leader and every modular civilization doubles the volume of combinations, or like it goes up, right? Multiplicatively, as opposed to like coupling 1-to-1, and also modding. Then it allows modding and stuff to create modules. So when you were mentioning the whole mini game thing, it feels like a mini game. I think a lot of what I hear about the way they change the Civilization game also creates modularity in the Civilization design that can be tweaked on the fly. So much like you say, you believe that they're going to get better, right? The games can get better over time. I have a distinct feeling that the way they streamlined and decided to compartmentalize the major changes to civilization format promotes and allows leeway to modularly affect the different parts of the game, as opposed to coupling them all together and making it nearly impractical to adjust things, right? You can only make micro adjustments if all of your components are coupled together. Like civilizations and leaders are coupled together, the ages are coupled together, there's no abrupt transition points in which you can move back and forth. So if you affect one, you're gonna just destabilize the entire like continuum of the session, right? At least that's what I glean from a design standpoint. Now, how does this affect other people's immersions? Yeah, that's gonna be a tough one. That's gonna be a mixed bag. In terms of technology and such, the game ends around the invention of thermal nuclear bombs, so mid 20th century. Interesting. So not like the post like internet. What I mean is, are there any integrations of like how propaganda and influence and information travels? Has that been integrated into civilization? Like modern information warfare and like intrigue in the post-internet age. I've always wondered if they're ever going to like integrate or tackle the aspects of the internet's effects on global relations. You do miss in information. Oh, okay, never mind. You already answered it. You already answered it. Might come later at the DLC too. Oh, okay. Never mind. You already answered it. I didn't read the rest of your comment. Don't ignore the last. Ignore the last comment. I'm waiting. I'll look forward to seeing if they do try to like simulate it in some way or represent it in some way. Sorry, didn't read the rest.
Heijutsu.
Ninjutsu. Thermonuclear bomb.
Yonju-ni.
Yonju-ni. I gotta stop thinking about tone.
Dojitsu.
Dojitsu. 24-hour impressions. How often, how much do you usually play civilization games, Gecko?
Chuo.
Cool. I don't know how to spell.
早口
早口。
西
西。Oh no.
Moto partner
Multiple partner.
入れる
Where was Ireru yesterday to remind me of stuff? Jeez. Uh...
休む
休む。
北西
北西。
考える
考える。Not that much overall. You say you have phases. Well, you'll be into it and play 35 games, so like 50 hours of gameplay over a few weeks, and then you won't touch it for months. So you're not a die-hard fan, not habitual. I see. I see. Is there something that you do habitually play, or is video game more of an in and out thing? Like, do you secretly play a gacha game? I'm kidding, but that would be I would be a little bit surprised. Yeah, I would actually be a little bit surprised if that joke turns into a reality. Very low probability. Very low probability. Maybe like a mobile live service gacha game. That seems very out of character at the moment with my limited knowledge. Say Hoang?
Hoang
Hoang. And yes. Yeah. Oops.
今年
Oshi.
300
300.
年
In and out, I say you play a lot more when you were younger and had more free time, unsurprisingly. Yeah, that checks out. Mm-hmm.
出す
That's
Ataru.
Ataru.
Umai.
Umai. Ah! This is the special one. I went too quickly. This is the special one. It's very, very long. Hold. I can figure this one out. It's Okona, right? Okonao. Okonen. Which is like to carry something out. You also try to limit it somewhat consciously to allow time for more productive hobbies. Don't really like the term, but you see what I mean. Yep. Such as language learning, for example. Yeah, I'm not the biggest fan on the word productive. When it comes to the objectivity of productive, right? Back in the day, sorry, like 20 years ago, the word productive had a more holistic appeal. Nowadays, though, the word productive is specifically meaning the objectifiable consequence of results. So when you're learning something, it's viewed as if you've accomplished something that is tangible or measurable. And productive has fallen by the wayside to include things that are holistically unmeasurable, right? Especially when you used to play a lot of FPS and sports, and in those you can go game after game after game. Yeah, I can see that. Nowadays you're more into story-driven games or some strategy games. Yeah, I mean, you're talking to... I can empathize with that. You're obviously talking to a person who built an entire holistic legacy into like niche world building off games that are practically considered mini games in the scope of an entire universe. So like one of my favorite things to do is I follow developer universes. So like the Steam Works, the Steam World universe by Thunderfold. Played 3 or 4 games of different genre that belong to the same mythos and narrative, right? I consider Supergiant Games a microcosm of their own things as they dabble into different genre, but their storylines, their writing quality, their music are all part of a bigger picture. So oftentimes, even if they don't literally have story drivens, and of course I play Yakuza Like a Dragon, if there's any mythos when it comes to games, regardless of the maturity of their mechanics, right? The mechanical properties, FPSs being one of them, sports games, competitive games, it's mechanical forward. That's what keeps you going and also quote unquote make you feel productive in a way. Now you have unmeasurable things, at least in my opinion. I can empathize with the idea, but I'm sharing like why it is for me, which is the story driven thing creates an unmeasurable personal and sentimental productivity that is often rarely ever felt now or prioritized in like the gaming space, if you know what I mean. Like for example, when you log your like 60,000th hour of Fortnite, you are measuring not the evolvement of other people, you are measuring something that doesn't persist beyond the game, which is how many kills you rack today. It's like, that's it. That's all you got. For me, in my opinion, understanding what that habit is doing for yourself as a person allows you to either move on or, you know, quit or stop or regulate or moderate most of your habits. And story-driven games have a natural tendency already built in to have a moderation. In terms of strategy games, maybe not as much. However, strategy games also play in a sense of completed sessions, and those sessions are sufficient enough to not to create like jerk reflex, like reinforced short dopamine pushes, right? The loss, in fact, I would even argue strategy games, the loss of everything, like starting over, is a big enough barrier to moderate the consistent habit formation of routine dopamine response. So, right, like the heightened loss of something. And what I mean by that is a conclusion, but to another beginning, right? For example, when a story ends, it's a monumental thing. Much even well over a strategy game. However, a strategy game is still light years in terms of the feedback you get from playing your 15-minute session where you steamroll your opponents, or the 15-minute session in which you get steamrolled by a matchmaking system with impersonal or lack of any interaction or time to feel attachment to any person that you're interacting with or possibly interacting with, right? Very different world, very different circumstances. I like to build legacy now with story-driven things. If I have to play a competitive game ever again, right? Like if someone said, "Oh, why don't you go play competitive video game?" Right? The usual response I would say is, "Are you going to play with me?" And commit and create memories and experience so that the competitive video game isn't lacking, quote unquote, this different side of productivity that a lot of people who like competitive video games and gacha games and rotating live service models and platforms do not care about anymore. I see what you mean. You used to play a lot of Mount and Blade, Red Orchestra 2, Rocket League, Madden. Once you've got hundreds of thousands of hours in those, it can still feel good, but always the same. Yeah, story-driven games are more keen to watching a new TV show, anime to you that also feels emotionally productive. Yeah, that's like, and you can take those stories with you, right? Right. Like, how can you convey your day-to-day feeling of Madden and Rocket League? There's only so much you can while still reinforce continuing doing it. Meanwhile, when you play a story-driven game, you're looking forward to the next game because that experience is brought with you. And if there's any time you come to revisit those games, nostalgia, it's emotionally productive because nostalgia reinforces, or finding another reinforcing inspiration and whatnot. So those things are finite, right? And I don't think a lot of times until one gets older with a lot of experience in life, find that things do come to an end only to contribute to a new beginning. And it's very difficult to start again or to create an investment into another group of people, both fictional and or real, right? Like online interactions, and persistently doing that. What can feel very comfortable is playing something that doesn't ever age. It will not emotionally be productive, but it will be cathartic and protective and preventive, very comforting. And in that way, that's why certain games now are considered neither mechanically, pragmatically productive and or emotionally productive. At first, they're incredibly emotionally productive until the mechanical productivity is diminished to the point where even emotional productivity no longer exists. As in, you have become numb, routine, and it becomes a grind, right? The moment the G word rolls around is the moment even emotional productivity has disappeared from the activity. However, because of routine, that's what you do, right? You want to keep that routine. So moving on becomes arguably even harder than playing a story-driven game. It's tough, right? I think about this relationship so often when I hear people who feel loneliness, they're drifting, they don't think anything is productive, even to the point where they think reading a story or writing about themselves or expressing something about themselves is not productive. Heck, even resting is emotionally productive now, largely because the vast majority choose not to rest and continue doing the routine that they have. And that's kind of a I can see your choices that you're making actually, pretty much address most of these concerns. And that's why probably the two of us agree quite a lot about moderation and having different perspectives. They help us moderate our human condition to want to keep on spinning the same wheel sometimes. It's very low effort, it's incredibly efficient, and I mean, low effort is very relaxing. When things get really easy, you kind of you're okay with constantly doing it. Not personally, but it would drive me insane if I continue to do that. It's something that I'm trying to understand better when talking to other people, right? Especially people online. It's my consensus, it's my concession to try to understand why this is the case. However, I do not feel any of these things. Like, it's really hard for me to empathize with someone who thinks once you learn something, you don't need to learn anymore. That kind of aspect is something that I almost want to say in a very dark but serious way. That's like dying inside, like slowly waiting and dying away when you limit the one asset of being a human being. Like, yes, animals have this too, and other extents of consciousness, but man, one of the glorious things about being born a human being is the potential for exploration. It's ending things, starting new things, but those ends are only literal, they're not figurative. An end leads to a new beginning. Everything you do is potentially productive, provided you can make it productive. So if you choose not to, then there aren't many things that would change otherwise. You do get back into these games out of nostalgia from time to time. Sometimes it can be frustrating too, as I lost a lot of skill in the meantime, so you usually do much worse than what you remember. Doesn't that make you feel young again though? Honestly, I know this is a euphemism, but when I go back to a game, I'm like, dude, I'm so crap at this. Well, looks like I can spend a little bit more time rediscovering myself again. Or you could explain it. Something like, oh man, I don't play like this anymore, right? Because you're a different person now. So there are lots of like alternative ways to look at it from a perspective like, oh, you lost skills. But what if the skills you gain are the skills that you don't need? Like, it's kind of like a lot of not only is it nostalgia, is an opportunity for self-reflection of all the things you have done now. So with a loss of those skills, what are the skills and experiences you have now that makes the experience different? So when you visit something, I know nostalgia goggles are really powerful, but when I revisit a game, I don't revisit it for the sake of preserving exactly what I wanted or do. I know the mechanic side of thing would suggest, the game itself is static, right? The literal game itself is static. So the skill, I totally understand. Like, it is frustrating. Like, oh yeah, this system, it didn't age well. I didn't practice the skill. However, you can practice the skill, but now you can experience the game differently as well. I think this is a perspective that a lot of older and more experienced and wider, like more experienced people who get a wider perspective as they grow older, be able to revisit older things and rekindle something that's emergent, right? You take the static object and you no longer look at it the same. I think one of my favorite things that I go to a lot of times are coming of age stories, coming of age TV, books, movies, right? I meant TV shows, not literal TVs. And you can view them in a different lens. And you can test yourself. How did your perspective change now? So whenever I like do a legacy, I call them like legacy periods, where you go back and do a legacy. And that legacy comes with all your collective emotional and pragmatic productivity in your life. It's very different from a lot of younger people that I've talked to over the years, where they go back to a game to recapture or attempt to recapture the same exact feeling and reflections. So they want to be static in time. So they want to go back and live in a time that they are no longer able to live anymore. And they continue to do that out of frustration and possibly a more of an escape, right? It becomes an escape, but more of a coping escapism, not a like an emergent or transformative escapism, where like you're going back to a time of old, but you can no longer see it like it was the first time, because it's no longer the first time. However, instead, a lot of people see reboots and remakes and they say, I just want the same thing again. But hear me out. The human condition dictates that no matter how strongly you want something to be the same, both consciously or subconsciously, they're no longer the same. So hoping for something to be the same, knowing logically that it's not possible, maybe it's possible, we'll just say highly improbable, is something that I feel emotionally comes with maturity, right? Some sort of maturity in the way we handle emotional productivity. Going back to an old game is not considered both pragmatically emotionally productive nor pragmatically productive from, I would say, most people who are mid-20s and younger most of the time. Like a majority, but not everyone. As one grows older, you would hope, one would say that ideally this perspective changes. Right? Why relearn the foundations of Japanese, for example? Why revisit the foundation of your native language, for example? I do this in real time. The moment I started learning Japanese, I started thinking about English differently because they are connected. I'm not trying to revisit English and relearn English. My interest in English is not from the perspective that I already know English, right? Is that now I'm learning another language in the context of an existing language of which I wasn't incentivized to look at differently. And I think that type of behavior is a hallmark of someone who has transitioned into concerning with legacy. So be it having a child will make you do that for sure. So if you decide to start a family, starting a relationship with another person is like starting over. Like what I mean is you have to revisit the core foundations of what's like to be a human because you're conversing and sharing a life with another human being. So you go through the process of discovery again. You're discovering another human being, right? In the first process, when you're born, you're discovering yourself, right? You're building yourself. And then when you meet another person, it's revisiting that process all over again. Only this time, it's a little different. Same, but different. Video games, having children, starting new projects, starting new skills, going into different fields, starting new careers. Yeah, humans, emotionally productive and pragmatically productive, hopefully hand in hand, right? Your wife is actually into proper retro gaming? Interesting. Playing games from when we were kids. Think old Zelda, I see. Mario and Pokemon. I don't do it as much yourself, but it's fun to watch her play these older games. Transformative. Transformative. I would love to watch someone I know experience something, right? Because they're emotionally productive. Incredibly emotionally productive. It could be pragmatically productive because you can totally then buy awesome gifts for your wife. Easy gift idea. Sorry. When I think about like observing people, I immediately think of all the emotional and productive things I can do with that information. Easy use. One could even say I'm a professional manipulator. I'm kidding. I'm not gonna finish that. I was gonna do like a really like stilted joke about like there's a fine line between someone who constantly think about how they can use information they learn about someone, and you can imagine there are abusers and bad actors and good actors and whatnot, but I often think about these things quite a lot. If you throw me a bone, a couple information about yourself that's very identifiable, I for sure will leverage that in order to demonstrate that I'm actively listening, and then using that in any way to promote like a desirable form of discussion, right? And we talked about gift giving already, and you already mentioned the gift giving thing when we were talking to Sub-Zero about Valentine's Day, right? Actually, what did you do for Valentine's Day with your wife, Gecko? I don't know if that's too personal of a question, but what did you end up doing for this special day? I didn't hear what become of Sub-Zero. Sub-Zero is busy with university, and they're in the same time zone that you are. So I imagine he's really busy. But I haven't gotten the opportunity to ask him how did Valentine's Day go because of our discussion. No, not yet. Not yet. He comes and goes. His schedule really does misalign with mine. Like he has to go to bed by the time I start because of university schedule and whatnot. I'll probably end up talking to him at some time on a random day, and or probably in the summer, maybe when classes let up, or like study week or something would be a very reasonable time. much more reasonable time.
仕方がない
入学
入学 仕方仕方がない
考古学
考古学
小文字
小文字
大文字
大文字 The special day was a bit disrupted here this year. Oh. You went to the restaurant and it was nice, but was starting to get sick at that point. Oh. Not in the best of shape, huh? And there was a general strike in the postal service here. Oh, you guys have something similar going on. Interesting. So both our gifts were stuck in warehouses somewhere and arrived late. Yeah, I've been hearing quite a lot of like this is obviously a coincidence, but there is something very somewhat similar going on in the United States regarding like delivery related postal service, right? And just so happens by coincidence it was this month. Yeah, this month. I'm kind of curious if this might not be a coincidence where like because the internet shares a lot of discontent, right? Things tend to reverberate and trigger other similar things. So at the current time, there is something going on in the United States as well. And maybe like the transparency or the exposure of this kind of dissonance and discontent is bouncing off each other from like varying Western countries, right? Yeah, pure coincidence. I like to say it's still coincidental. But yeah, that is certain something here. Unless it's not as serious as I'm making it out to be.
男の子
男の子
豚肉
豚肉さあお行るなう行う
行う
You don't know how closely it would be related, but I know all public postal services face challenges with the decline of letters and the volume of packaging skyrocketing. Yeah, that's probably what I would say. Maybe not a coincidence. Due to established services around the world, right? Established services around the world. I think it's even less coincidental in worlds that have a very specific system of postal services. So it wouldn't be as coincidental that it's westernized right now too, because I can only imagine the way public postal services work in like an easternized country, if you know what I mean. Of course, this also comes with the ignorance of how the lack of information that I actually know of how postal services are financed and funded in a much more disparate system, because since you're in Belgium, I feel like a very specific part of European countries and as well as United States, which is like, you know, related by legacy, those postal service systems have predated the United States, arguably even the United States. So some of those systems rippled from that. We're talking about like a localized regional modernization of postal service. Meanwhile, you know, maybe moving far to the east, the way they perform like postal services and funding sources and systems may be different enough that there's no coinciding challenges when it comes to letters and volumes. Like, for example, something that's very cute about the Japanese culture is their obsession with stationery. You know what I mean? Like, there's that. I mean, there is some enthusiasm and niche enthusiasm in the United States, but largely that's probably even related to the idea that like the Japanese culture is trendy. There might have been a period of time where stationery was incredibly trendy, but the internet kind of like supplanted that quite a bit. But in Japan, I feel like the trend for stationery and the use of postal services and whatnot continues to thrive as a form of like traditionalism. And I actually can kind of imagine China still sending letters back and forth. You know what I mean? Like, largely due to the traditional significance of that type of thing that maybe is not necessarily preserved so much in westernized culture anymore. Like, I can tell you now, I might send like one or two form of letters, like carbon things. And then when it comes to like postal services itself, whichever type of service that's far more integrated with the internet is taking precedence, right? Not to mention an Amazon kind of situation, if you know what I mean. Or even competition where freelancing competition, you know, you have like mediators that get the package delivered from a all around source, you know, like other people, right? Things like models like DoorDash and stuff has delivered things very differently now, and their social structure is very different. I wouldn't be surprised if that's kind of how other like farther removed places do things, where they, you know, form a network of delivery, and it's like contractual like day-to-day contracts, as opposed to this really much more elaborate system that is static, right? That's starting to compete with systems that are dynamic, because they can just change. Like Amazon can change their volumes and stuff and reorder far more quickly than, say, the postal service. Internet moves at a different pace, you know? Internet commerce. It's interesting. I don't know enough details, so I'm being very hand-wavy and generic and throwing generalities around. You're gonna have to excuse me. I don't really have a incredible large investment in understanding the infrastructure of the postal service in different countries. On account of they're not necessarily attached to my use case as well. Entry Boku. Okane.
お金
Okane. Hayaku.
早く
Hayaku. What are we going with this? Arinai. Right. No. Yes, no. So it's have enough, but is it it's still taco, right? Sufficient taco? So not sufficient.
足りない
Arinai. Yeah. On. Oh, right on. Major work. Yes, here you are now talking about more explicitly splitting the postal service between its public services, which we do not need to be profitable, and its profit generating activities. Yeah. That's definitely some a way to go about it. I don't know what the actual dialogue is in the United States right now to try to negotiate that. Maybe I should do a little background reading on like what avenues are going about doing that. This is Big Masterpiece. So I sax, right?
対策
MAKU.
広がる
Hirogaru.
学ぶ
Why was this think? Rice patty, you find a heart and it makes you think, oh, whose heart this is. Yee. Yee. Hmm. Oops.
Nanzen.
Nanzen.
Takarakuchi.
Takarakuchi. Oh no. It's a Keito.
Keito.
Keito. Okay. Oh, dang it. I was having second thoughts and man. Not Jean. Jean. It's fine. Should have paused longer.
十分
十分
他の人。け。
その他その他 その他 Other, that, other, another, other, there's so many other. Other, that, other, その他 I don't know how to phrase this. Like, what do you... the others. I don't know, let's just put that out there. The others. Other than that. Oh, other than that actually kind of works. Others, the other. Oh, man. Okay, sure. The others, okay. That. Jeez. Gintama.
Gintama.
I got anti-rendakud on this. Anti-rendakud.
映る
Uru.
その他
Okay. Did I screw this up? Wait. Oh. No, I screwed this up in... I screwed this up something else. It's not Neen or Jean. I screwed this up because... Oh, no, wait. Just kidding. Tanin. I keep screwing this up. Tanin, yeah, the other person stole our tacos and
他
Nintendo.
人
Tanin. So it was a combination. It was a combination of stuff. Tanin. Not just one thing.
Sakubun.
Agubun.
Umare
Mare.
Moto
Moto.
Soko.
Soko.
Daiyo
Aiyo.
Mikazuki
Mikazuki.
Ame.
Ame. 量 right?
羽
羽
本当、
本当 Master. Hey, oops. I was thinking of the read, not the meaning. The meaning was fine.
男の人、
男の人。
工学
工学。工学。Copy. What are we trying to copy? Oh,
写す
it's
主に、
主に
同じ、
同じ。
里
あと、
いろいろ、
いろいろ。Oops, 今まで、今まで、今まで、今まで。足す
足す、
足す。
金
金、
青い、
青い。
学生
学生、
今まで
今まで。 Ah! Oh, right. To add something. That's right. To be enough. To add something to be enough. Whoops. Actually, I think that might be a new one that we screwed up again. That might actually be a double crit. Yeah, that's the first time I missed a few things from the new batch twice, I think, in terms of oh no, I didn't miss it consecutively yet. No consecutive misses yet for today. That doesn't sound right. It's
当たり
Atari.
Kosaku.
Osaku. Speaking of retro gaming, Atari is my mnemonic for Atari. Oh, that's a good one. And yeah, and therefore Ataru as well. Yeah, that's a good one. I didn't even make that connection 2 days ago. Atari is a good one. What was the what is the kanji for Atari? Does it would be funny if it had if it had something to do with it. The Atari was a pretty big success. Yeah. I added an ooh, didn't I? Yeah. That's a typo. It's more of a pronunciation. Accidentally didn't pronounce it correctly in my head. Do we go with walk on this? Yes.
Hoka.
Oka.
不正
Say.
"切れる
Ireru.
"主人
Ijin. Shitamachi.
下町
Oh. apparently the Japanese company is simply Atari in katakana. Oh, interesting. So they didn't come up with some although the use of the same read and can't be a coincidence, right? I think it's not a coincidence. Like, I often ask people to give me the kanji and or the kana or whatever they decide to do for the company name because I love the meaning that they end up using. So I don't think it's a coincidence, in my opinion. Like, names are so fascinatingly different. They're not like often made because of legacy in Japan, like in Japanese culture, as opposed to like on the Western hemisphere. Oftentimes they're named for legacy, like proper nouns are used to name for legacy. Like, oh, this is Joe's Pizza, or I don't know why I use the New York thing, but the idea is like it's a person's name and it's like there's a story behind it, but not in terms of the meaning of the actual characters. So I feel like that is all too convenient. All too convenient. Like Honda and I don't know, Ikebukuro, you know, Shibuya, all those have like very interesting origins. I mean, Tokyo and Kyoto, come on. I don't think we have to stretch too far of an imagination. Could be making a bigger deal than. Did you ever come across a skit of those things where here's a human condition thing, especially with intellectuals, whenever time passes, right, and then generations roll over, and then when intellectuals look back on literature and writing and traditionalism and stuff, they often elevate the meaning because the scope and the perspective is no longer the same. So you get these things, like these fun things where like you're evaluating Shakespeare or something, or you're evaluating like classic British literature, and suddenly you often wonder, nah, no way, right? They didn't, no way. So there's always this like apprehension and common like funny thought is like, what if they just winged it? And it just happens that we're looking for meaning and patterns where there weren't meaning and patterns. Now, a cynic would say, stop making a big deal of something that's not, there's no possible way they could. Yes, that could be true. Does that mean coincidences don't happen because of the human condition? Because we must also remember that humans are great at doing patterns. Whether it's subconscious or not, they are able to integrate and intuit lots of things at because it sounds nice, because it has a specific feel to it. So deciphering that type of thing in retrospect is something that could happen actually naturally without necessarily understanding, trying to fundamentally create it. Like, for example, when Shakespeare was writing his piece, did he think, oh yeah, this is going to be heroic couplets, this is an epic poem, these are the stanzas and clauses? No, you probably say reasonably, he probably wrote something and he said, this is a great idea, let's just do this. But in retrospect, we could see those patterns, whether it's cautious or not. It's kind of an interesting thing when people try to cheapen the beauty of human subconscious intuitive creativity when you don't care about it. So for example, a lot of times someone's like, oh yeah, no, the developers didn't intend this. Like, they didn't plan out that their game was going to become this. And it doesn't cheapen the fact that they were able to do it haphazardly or coincidentally or some sort of culmination that led to that. Like, if it was indeed haphazard and non-pattern and not created by a human construct, then another human being would find it indecipherable to distinguish these coincidences and or elegant occurrences, right? You love looking at the names of places in Japan and deciphering. Haven't done much of that company names yet, though. Ah, okay. And I'm sure that's a thing even for modern stuff. People will find hidden meanings in stories, and 80% of the time that's on purpose, but 20% of the time the author will admit it was not intended. Yeah, exactly. And you know what's so beautiful about that? The 80-20. I love that you use the 80-20, by the way. I see you. I see you why you use 80-20. So that 20% is the amount of time that I feel people should explore and discover hidden meanings or ascribe sentimental productive ideas to that, right? Because humans are emergent. They are capable of emergent properties. So when something is lost to time, it can be rediscovered by coincidence once again. As well as when problems subside and they no longer exist, they are forgotten. But when problems recur, there's an emergent property that you can coincidentally still find again, but through a different lens. So, I don't want to use the E word because a lot of times that's kind of, it's a little bit tenuous, but humans are adaptive and they are emergent. Even when spinning the same wheels and looking at the same patterns, emergent things happen. And I think that's for better or for worse. You know, it's a whole package. When there are people who are able to find more meaning in something that it literally was not intended by the person's creation, but it's also part of why it happened. That person happens to be human. So there are intrinsic and unforeseen patterns because humans like doing things, and they like doing things in a way that even resonates with them beyond the explicit nature of structure. I'm saying all this because my punchline is natural languages versus a constructed language, right? Objective opinions, or trying to be objective opinions, versus subjective opinions, right? I know I know some people are going to say, like, what do you mean objective opinions? Like, I'm talking about people who make opinions and pass them off as objective observations and truths. That's something that's a little weird, but that's the intent, right? The intent of a person when they share an opinion and their intent is to present it like it's a fact, versus the subjective opinion, which they understand that humans' intentions can be coincidental through a lot of mystical powers of how we integrate so many things to intended things. And I absolutely love that. In fact, we had this joke way back in high school when I took a film class. I took a film class in high school and we evaluated 3 of Alfred Hitchcock's films, and the passion that the instructor, the teacher, was talking about, like, oh yeah, you see, this is stage, right? Like, because back in Alfred Hitchcock days, you have to stage all your environments. It's not naturalism, right? Where, like, oh, it's okay now, we have portable devices and recording devices. Oh, here we go, we can record the natural setting, so you don't have to worry about staging or anything. In Alfred Hitchcock's default is that they have to prep the locations. So, like, this room is literally not a real, quote unquote, real room in which you decorate to take, like, you can walk into a room and you can record the room. You can go to the location of a place and record it and not necessarily have to deliberately, intentionally do that. But coincidence, right? The director has an eye. The culmination of the crew's experience can preferentially create an unintentional pattern in even selecting that. But in Alfred Hitchcock's case, like poetry and Shakespeare, he deliberately put these things in. Like, why does this barren room have only a bed, some awning, and lots of fans. Like, well, fan has a blade. And why is the camera pointed outside of a window looking in on a place filled with blades, right? Suddenly there's a fan blade, like a ceiling fan, and suddenly there are a collection of blades here and more blades here. I'm talking about the movie Psycho, by the way. And you're thinking like, yeah, 80%. And then are there less coincidences in Alfred Hitchcock films? Pretty much there are less coincidences. That's why you pick those things like Shakespeare and whatnot. But still, it can still happen with and without the intent of the director or the people, because I think humans are remarkable in the sense that you could do things that are very clever by feeling. That is, I don't know about you, but that's pretty cool. Sometimes that's probably one of the most exciting parts about life in general, when you have people who sometimes feel as opposed to spend all your time deliberating the modernization and meaning of stuff. Like, I'm feeling this conversation out, right, Gecko? I like to think we're not like 99 to 100% calculating, understanding that we're this, what the meaning and like pragmatic use of the conversation we're having right now. It's more of an 80-20 split. Like 20%, I have no idea where this conversation is going. In fact, I like to say a lot of people online, since they don't like to lead conversations, they typically have like 90% feel it out and 10% calculated thoughts. I would put myself a little higher, maybe like 60 to 70%. I prepare things to talk about every day, and I've done that for so long that there are various already networked routes of my way of discussing things. I still reserve some percentages to be like, yeah, let's just wing it. Just wing it. Feel it out. Humans are crazy. It's how I became more of a real boy than a robot. I think most of this happened a little after my 20s. I became less of a robot, trying to control everything, trying to find the pragmatic use of everything, as opposed to sometimes just filling it out. Speaking of that, that's one of the things you like about good animated movie shows. Every frame starts with a blank sheet, so everything is very purposely included. Yes. Animation is something that is incredibly more pronounced and nuanced than one might think, right? And filmmaking used to be like that too. I'm not saying that it's bad or good. It's very different. Back in the day, filmmaking was that too. You had to like prep everything. There's no naturalism involved. Like, it's very you can try to mirror naturalism, but that's a monumental effort. I get that there's a whole, and I'm not touching upon the other side of things where like people like hyperrealism and all that, like naturalistic things and whatnot, largely because when I go to the movies and I watch animation, I'm looking for emergent properties created, intended and unintended by a creator. Hyperrealism, if you're constantly going for hyperrealism, walk out and say hi to someone on the street, right? Something like that. There are movies that wonderfully highlight natural, like modern, tries to capture a vignette of modern life, and I kind of really love that too, largely because I literally can't do that, right? And what I mean by literally can't do that, we're talking about witness a person's life go by in a matter of 2 hours. That's something that film can do, right? And animation. Ooh, I just watched the Wild Robot. Have you watched that with your daughter yet, Gecko? I'm about to watch another movie called Flow, which came out last year. But those two movies are fantastic, by the way. If you want to, in my opinion, if you're gonna watch something with your daughter or your family, the animation style in that and like its messages and stuff is incredibly wonderful. It's a little blend. It's the message is very adult oriented and kid oriented, depending on the lens of the viewer. So it's like a family oriented movie where there's something for the adults and something for the child, and pretty wonderful. You think you have a very curious nature? As long as you're not sticking to small talk only, I could probably get interest in most topics. Well, consider that an empathetic point, right? I can empathize with that. In fact, I kind of just leverage asking someone else about their question, and then I will bounce off that. It's humorous that when people say, "Hey, how do you ice break?" Right, with a stranger, ask them a question. Hear me out here. If you're like me, whatever they say, in my opinion, will tend to be interesting. Now, if you don't find a lot of things interesting, then one must have the ability to lead a conversation. So that is internalized, and you need icebreakers, right? The traditional sense of icebreakers. Honestly, I go up to the person, I ask them a question, and I use it as a starting point. I think I have entered so many discussions in my life up to this point, and I'm only 37, so I can't even imagine what I'm gonna be like in 60 if I ever live that long, right? How much fun will it be to challenge myself to see if I can't find interest in the other person's topic? Like, it sounds like I have something to say about a lot of things, largely because I prepare for it. You don't know about the wild robot, you'll look into it. Flow is definitely on your radar on the other hand, but you haven't seen it. Yeah, I haven't seen it yet. I'm about to soon. Once I stop losing sleep and getting engrossed into Pirate Yakuza, while it sucks up all of my life energy. Wait. Does this also mean expert? No. Oh, it still means master though. Master is good. It's fine. Oops. That's Ishi. Whoops. I typed the wrong read. My bad.
Jibun.
I went through so many synonyms there. Good morning, Turn. Hello, hello.
Sagaru.
Sagaru.
Fuyuyasumi.
Fuyuyasumi.
Ishikoro.
Ikoro. Shikata. You want to watch the WoW Robot in the cinema, but you end up didn't because forgot? That's fine. You can always watch it now. There's a lot of movies you want to watch, but didn't. WoW Robot is a really great one. It's a great coming of age story. Like, it's about friendship. Unlikely friendship. I'm a sucker. Okay, so I do have a guilty pleasure. I don't care what it is and how trite and cliche it is. I love coming of age stories of unlikely companionship. It's a beautiful thing, and I think people of all ages should watch some of those every once in a while. So, it can be serious, it can be devastating. Like, what I mean is, it can involve lots of subjects like death, grief, overcoming adversity. It oftentimes, it's wonderful because it's timeless. It's a coming of age story, and unlikely companionship is kind of the name of the game these days, right? Finding companionship in unlikely scenarios, and those unlikely scenarios mean that when you have normal scenarios, or like more normalized scenarios, like in real life, it can be a very creative way of doing things. And Flow is pretty much going to be like that too. Iron Giant is my closest metaphor. Not metaphor, sorry. Iron Giant is my closest analogy. A reverse analogy, it might actually be direct. It's the closest analogy to the WoW Robot, the Iron Giant, the movie from early 2000s. I forgot when Iron Giant came out. Yeah. Companionship in the most unlikely scenarios. There are like lots of live action ones that deal with like human grief, abuse, neglect, like loneliness, that kind of thing. But I think when it comes to animation, it has a very vibrant, a different dimension to it that is a lot more like family friendly, right? That can balance out. But I'm also a sucker for those type of things too. Modern companionship in unlikely cases, unlikely places. I think the what are they called? The Holdovers. The movie The Holdovers was definitely one of my personal favorites of recent memory regarding companionship, unlikely companionship. Basically, people coming together by circumstance. They're just placed together, forced together, and they found companionship because humans are awesome. And obviously, the WoW Robot, while it's a robot and aminals, right? Aminals everywhere, they're still personifications of human condition, right? Humans wrote the script, and they're using animals and robots to represent that human companionship, and it's absolutely beautiful. I mean, I also recommend trying to watch some of those like animated shorts that use no language whatsoever other than human companionship. Like non-verbal, but completely non-verbal movies are incredible too, especially when it's done in animation, largely because then their goal is to make every animation and every non-verbal form of communication be the highlight of how humans, animals or elves or however, can form companionships without ever even exchanging words. Well, exchanging literal words. There are wonderful movies. Like, these are Google topics, in my opinion, if you're ever interested in how to like communicate with other people. There are also whole movies that are written, or books and whatnot, that are written where all the characters could not communicate with each other, but they do use spoken language, but they were unable to communicate with each other. There was a recent anime, I think it's called, what was it called translated in English? The Silent Voice or something, where one of the characters can't even literally say anything, right? They were mute or deaf. I forgot which one. It's either mute or deaf, and companionship can be found. So lots of those things. I watch those things all the time because there's so many different ways you can get people to want to be together, right? There was a couple movies and stuff that I watch about matchmaking. That might be a little bit more contentious, but like, for example, if you're a parent or something, someone looking out for someone, how can you bring two people together as a person outside of the potential problem? So, and then I obviously spend the large majority of my time, if no one's recommending anything for me to watch and whatnot, I would spend the vast majority of my time, 80% of the time, watching content that deals with how an observer, someone on the outside, interacts, all the scenarios of an observer overseeing the interaction of something else, right? Largely because it can be a very helpful point of inspiration for me to like tackle discussion topics. Pretty cool though. The WoW robot, I liked it. I quite enjoyed Guilty Passion. You really like the silent voice? Yeah, that's what it's called. Yeah, silent voice. Yeah, it's those things are beautiful, and it's also a coming of age story, right? A silent voice is a coming of age story because the two characters have matured. They reached a milestone in their life, and that milestone is facilitated by an open perspective, a maturity of perspective. So they like double down on it. I haven't watched a look back yet, or something like that. Something like Look Back. I keep forgetting these titles because now I'm like juggling two sets of titles, but I haven't watched this yet. That's also a coming of age story dealing with a lack of communication, and then eventually the coming of age is to develop communication. It's I'm not saying these come out every day. They actually don't. Like the coming of age story with like communication and stuff is a rarity, and oftentimes when they go viral, it's also a rarity. So I'm specifically talking about movies and things that came out and were actually kind of popular, but it's not the same. Like in the popular mainstream area, you're talking about things that are inconsequential, main characters doing whatever they want that's inconsequential, living power trips, ideal selves. Those are far more trendy, right? Because escapism, entertainment, you want to be entertained. So like if you watch an MCU thing, that's not what I'm talking about. So my guilty pleasure, 20% of the time I try to watch topical things, largely to keep in line. So like I keep up with the MCU. I am on episode 140 of One Piece. I watched all of Attack on Titan, right? That kind of thing. But in the long run, my guilty pleasures, the things that I have, are very devastating. I feel to a lot of people, very hard to watch for a lot of people. But it is the thing that makes me very grounded and secure and understanding about the human condition, largely because I watch a lot of human condition and people who write things to express their human condition. Authors and writers and movie people who present these topics, they probably have experience and background in these topics. We must remind ourselves, or try to encourage ourselves to remember, that all the entertainment that you see and consume are extensions and expressions of the people who have written them. So the people behind that are extensions from that. It is very different from products that are presented without the human touch. So when it comes to the creative process, if a movie feels very detached or book feels very detached, is very, very likely that the creator and the writer is a bit detached from it. Now, they can serve very functional purposes, like I need to get a public message out based on facts. That can be very detached, and it can be very appropriate and well received. It's not quite what I'm talking about when I'm talking about the movies I gravitate towards. Oftentimes, reading about the authors and the writers after watching their movie is a whole different depth. And that's what I love about it. I love books, movies. I used to not like these things, by the way. When I was younger, they were a waste of time. Like, why do I need to bother understanding other people's like problems and their history? Their product speaks for itself, right? Like, the product is what I'm buying. So if I like the product, I'll continue to buy the product. It's no concern of mine what the person is like. And yes, that was great. And objectively, it's sound logically because you don't want to have like confirmation bias or like ad hominem arguments and that type of thing, because it's very objective, right? You evaluate the person by the product. As I grow older, I become more and more interested in people, like invest in people, because don't need to concern self anymore. So nowadays, I buy, play video games, do things, skill build based on other people's interest. Largely because my interest is to gather interest of other people. It's a wealth, you know, it's a well that keeps on giving. You go up to a stranger and say, what have you been doing the last 3 months? And it's probably going to be quite a lot of things I can use, right, as inspiration. Love Look Back too. Oh, you watched Look Back? Okay. Now I'm gonna watch Look Back tonight. That's done deal, Gecko. I gotta watch Look Back tonight. It felt very pure, genuine, creatively speaking. Yeah. Yeah. Isn't it weird to even think that that person is the person who wrote Chainsaw Man? I keep using that because I read somewhere and I'm like, oh man. I'm pretty sure, right? It's a Chainsaw Man guy. Right? Yeah. I keep using that trivia because I'm like, oh man, it's like from the creators of Chainsaw Man. Like from the author and the mangaka of Chainsaw Man comes a what? You can definitely tell that Tatsuki, I think it's Tatsuki Fujimoto, right? Tatsuki Fujimoto, that is part of that is definitely an extension. The Look Back movie is definitely an extension, a whole different sphere of him, of that person, compared to like Chainsaw Man. A silence voice title in Japanese is form shape. Interesting. Which is literally translated to the shape of voice. Yeah. Oh, so that's the kanji for voice. Instead of using koe? Interesting. The shape of voice. Is that like a more formal voice? Or like a figurative voice? And then koe is like a literal voice? Is that why they didn't use koe? I like that it insinuates that the character does have a voice just shaped differently, not silent. Yeah, that's really poetic. You like Chainsaw Man C1, but it is indeed quite different. If anything, it says a lot about the creator to be able to pull that off. I know, right? You got two different dimensions of this creator. It's beautiful. Like that's kind of what I like about having a wider perspective focused on the creator, because when someone thinks of the creator as their product, right, then that person, in my opinion, is reflecting on the idea that they are only interested in part of the creator. So when the creator goes and do something else, those type of individuals would look elsewhere, right? Presumably. And at the same time, they would blame the creator or have some negative fallout with the creator. And that, in my opinion, is why oftentimes there's a balance between understanding that the creator is still someone who wants to have creative liberties. Now, why is this important to me personally? Is because publishers then have to act like creators are robots. largely because publishers are responsible for the success of their company. And if the viewers and the consumers constantly demand the same thing at the expense of not understanding that the creator wants creative liberties, then yes, in order for the creator to keep getting funding, the publisher's interest must align with the creator's interest. So oftentimes this creates that dynamic where the creator made something great and then they left the studio, right? Because they went off to have creative liberties. Now, in a different world, maybe because the internet travels really quickly, information travels, maybe there's enough time in which the world may change in the future where publishers have a different incentive, but it's more than just the publisher's motivation, because publishers are responsible for making money, and the money is dictated also by consumer interest. And nowadays, because of algorithm, consumer interest is focused on products, the objective end product, and it's so far removed from the creator's intent that poetically they don't even have a voice anymore, right? Not 100% sure, but you think this is indeed an older kanji for voice, and koe is more common now. I don't know if there are other subtleties to it. Okay, they're both read koe. Oh, okay. Okay. Interesting. And hear me out, the subtleties, I read some of the subtleties before, like in manga and written titles, that oftentimes the creators like it stylistically. Like what I mean is the meaning was a practical one. Like why is Sakamoto Day written katakana? I don't know if you saw that Sakamoto is written in some way and De is written in katakana. And a lot of times I read that like mangaka and stuff, they do it out of like practical reasons, like, oh, it looks better here, it's aesthetically more pleasing and lines up and stuff. So there could be something of that nature too, but it is interesting. Both are koe no uh is that still ke as a standalone? I actually don't have the kunyomi for ke yet. What's the kunyomi for ke? Oh, the shape. Do I have a kunyomi? I don't have a kunyomi yet for that. Shikata, whoops. Method. Oh, we have lessons. Oh man, I made quite a lot of errors today, huh? And then we got the 12. Let's do the 12 beforehand though. Is this Iki? Wait. No. Well, it would accept it, but I think Yuki. I'm trying to remember Yuki. Okay.
Nani?
Let's quickly do these.
行く
水色
広げる
You'll get it.
言う
Is this to spread something? Yes. Okay. That's what they wanted. Okay.
何人
I mean,
牛肉
Uniku.
何回
Nankai.
自立
Iritsu.
広い
Hiroi. Hiro. Okay, there we go. I believe the kun for is katachi. Oh wait, maybe I did have katachi. No, I'm not sure if I got katachi yet. It will probably come up soon on WaniKani as you learn the kanji. Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah, that's true. I haven't unlocked it yet. Oh wait, no. I should have had it, right? I already had the oh no. Maybe it's a little later. What is Mizuhiro? Mizuhiro is sky blue. And then Ishikoro is a small stone, which is still a stone. They were trying to introduce like Koro as like something like to miniaturize it. So Ishikoro is kind of funny. Those are new to me too. Especially Mizuhiro as well. Those are new to me. Stone is small. Yeah. Stone is small, right? And rock is bigger. Yeah. Iwa. I think Iwa is the one that Iwa. Is it Iwa? Yeah, Iwa is the thing that is bigger. So you could use Iwa. Pebble? It's still Pebble too. You can use Pebble. Pebble for or at least they define Ishikoro as Pebble. So Pebble and small stone. And then I guess Ishi is stone, and then Iwa. Iwa is like rock or boulder, something like bigger. But it's funny. Could you say big stone? I guess you could just use a no modifier and just call it a big stone. You keep confusing Ishi and Iwa. You keep saying Iwa. Oh, okay. Because, oh yeah, true. Yes, true. In this game I played, I'm still playing and waiting for updates. Wagotabi, they introduced Iwa and Ishi. Or they actually started with Iwa, because they were describing the castle on the rocks, Iwa. So, that's when I was like, oh, okay. And then Shashinko had Iwa as well, as opposed to Ishi. For like kind of a big kind of a big rock, but it's still kind of a stone too. So English, I think it's more of an English thing. When like once you look at people pointing to like stones and pebbles and boulders and stuff, and then seeing them say Iwa or Ishi, you kind of just go with it. At least in my opinion, it's like saying when does something become a rock and not a stone? Or like when does a stone become a rock? I'm like, yeah. In the same vein of ideas, I like that the creator of Oshinoko is also the creator of, oh yeah, Kaguya-sama, Love is War. Yeah, like, excuse me, Oshinoko and Kaguya-sama, like, isn't that great? I think that's beautiful. Multifaceted creators are wonderful. They're able to like tap in to something. I think it's even I think it's pretty neat when a creator is able to make something feel like something else, but it's completely different, yet it's the same. Like you know what I mean? Like when you're watching this, you're like, why does this feel so similar to something? And then you realize, wait a minute, and then it's like, but it's so different. How did they capture that? And sometimes it's almost inexplicable, and I really enjoy that type of thing when it comes to a creator. Like for example, think about a large group, right? Gecko, think about a large group. I watch people play Metaphor, right? But you think Persona, That's the crazy part. Or, as crazy as this may sound, the Like a Dragon series doesn't only have one writer. They have multiple writers on multiple projects at the same time. So when you're like going through the story and you're going through this, you're like, like, why does this constantly feel consistent yet the writers keep rotating? So it's kind of like a pretty neat aspect of even considering the people involved and what they have to do and juggle creatively and stuff. Iwa, and she tricked you a few times on WaniKani too. I didn't even get Iwa yet, and Iwa was the more common one that I've had exposure to than Ishi. Chikai. All right, so how does Chikai work? We have Chikai Keen. Interesting. Ooh, I have stuff I don't have. Okay. So close, nearby. Near is still near, yeah. More or less.
近い
Chikai.
近い
Cheek. You have to remember the chika portion to be able to read this. Imagine someone close to you. Too close. They're so close to you that you're touching their chika to your chika. Feel the cheeks on yours. It's getting awkward. I'm gonna need you to back off now. Chika. Alright. Chikai is fine. Oh yeah, loaf. Yeah, the bread loaf counter. We can finally use the alternative meaning counter for loaf of breads. I think the mnemonic they used was like, maybe back in the day they used axe to cut bread. I remember this. And it's yeah, it's still keen because it's a counter. Yeah. Okay. So bread loaf counter, recent years, yeah. Interesting, recent years. Inen? Close years, recent years.
近年
Inen.
近年
Alright, nothing changed there. Wait a second, what cheeks are we talking about exactly? That's a good question, Gecko. We're obviously talking about them cheeks. You know, them cheeks. You know? Them cheeks. Near sun. Oh, really? Oh, yeah. Oh, wait. Kinjitsu? So near sun, near day, very soon, in a few days, coming days. Okay.
近日
Kinjitsu. Yep.
近日
We're two kings. Now we have two kings. All right. I think we're fine. Well, most of these are fine. Wait. Bread counter. Is bread counter enough? It's not. I need loaf, don't I? Yeah, I need loaf. You know what? I'm just gonna be fine with it. It's a good test. I'm obviously doing what Gecko suggested earlier, which is just to use the lessons as testers. I think bread counter is fine enough. I could have been more pedantic to be safe, but I wanted to test. Chikai
近い
kinjitsu.
近日
It doesn't mean I won't enter it, obviously. Synonyms are there to catch complacency most of the time.
近年
Inen.
Kin.
Nice. All right. Yep. Not bad. 230 with the digression. Not bad, not bad. All right, so I screwed up toe this time on man. All right, we're not doing mnemonics anymore. We're not doing mnemonics anymore because this is the third exposure around. So, by the way, you can think of me when you see Geico. Oh yeah, that's true, because gecko. No, I did, but really though, really, I don't know if you caught my thing before. And both. I thought of saving money on car insurance. I don't know if you've ever got, like, if Twitch ever served you a Geico commercial, but sorry, gecko. There's another gecko in my. No, I'm kidding. But there's a very, very famous gecko who totally represents an auto insurance company called Geico. And their slogan is, you can save $100 on or more on car insurance, right? 15 minutes could save. Oh, you already did that. Oh my gosh, I didn't read this rest of your. I totally didn't read the rest of your comment. Just ignore everything. Sometimes I think faster than I read the rest of the comments. Yeah, 15 minutes. You knew this. You knew the motto more accurately than I did. 15 minutes could save you 15. Oh, is it percentage? 15% or more on cars. Oh yeah, that's right. We just went over. You watch NFL and Geico pretty much. Yeah. Yeah, heckin' Geico. I couldn't stop giggling every time I was like Geico or like get coal. I'm like, really? It was bound to happen. I'm not sure if there are any other Japanese vocabulary that has come up that line up with a another company yet, like an American, like an English company yet. Can I think of one? Not sure yet. Kia comes up a little bit, right? Kia, the vehicle, the automotive manufacturer, Kia. "15 minutes." I forgot they use percentage. All right, let's go over our mnemonics. Okay, so neck, yakuza, death, jet, knife, fortune, city, long, mama, angel, hung, grain, eat, sheep, ladle, lion, boil, blood, house. Surprisingly, this last level took longer than this level when it came to like how quickly I rattled these things off. Okay, and we're just gonna do reads now because it's day 3. But we try our best without it, right? Shoe, homo, ya, ryo, zen, mei, go, ka, yo, ho, ai, an, to, せ 曲 曲 toku ち you ち none 質と Now please make sure to mention me when you switch to Geico so I can get your commission. Hey, if that was the case, I would totally give you a referral for your commission. Unfortunately, I'm already a Geico commercial. This is not a Geico commercial. I'm already a Geico customer. Not sponsored, by the way. But I'm not sponsored by Geico, and also I am already a Geico customer. So unfortunately, let's double check these very quickly. Just to make sure. Yep, we're good. We should just make the Amo to oh, interesting. To make it all on to make it all on. I see what you mean. Okay, let's correct my errors. Okay, so let's review my errors. Well, not really correct my errors, but review my errors. So what did I do here? I jumped the gun and I was thinking of something else. This was a something else situation. So it was take. Take was my error. And Ishikoro wrong read. I used the onyomi. So we're using the kun, right? And the error was ishi. And then what was this one? It was a definition error. Definition error was to add something. This one was special. It was a jerk reflex. I didn't think about it long enough. So, o. Oka. Okana. Okana. This was a jerk reflex too. Jerk reflex, literature. Definition error. This was a read error. Oops. Chujin, not Shujin, Chujin. And then reader, wrong reader, so I used the kun as opposed to using onyomi. Oops. Anin. Now that you've got some experience, how do you feel about their approach regarding the order in which readings are taught? As in, you think? Oh, sorry. Yes. Sorry. Yes, Okonen. That's fine. We would have corrected it with the mnemonic, but yes. You mean what do you mean by in which the order readings are taught? Are you talking about like, so the readings is different from translation. So you're talking about like, this is, by the way, not the error that I made, but not the same. What you call it? What do you mean by the reading? The order in the readings? Are you talking about like onyomi versus kunyomi order? I clearly wrote kunyami there. Again, hypercorrection, guys. Hypercorrection. Not really a big deal when you review these things. The idea that sometimes on is introduced first, sometimes it's kun based on what they think is most relevant. It's fine. It's fine. So its own default. So how I view it is own default until kun is more common. Yeah. And that makes for a pretty simple juggle so because you're asking me how I feel about it, so far this is the only exception right now. Like this is the structure, right? Until then there's a third phase. There's gonna be a third phase soon when kuns have owns. Owns that are not common. Right, so there's a third phase. So far, I have no problems juggling this phase, which is onyomi unless otherwise. So it's that's how I'm picking up these too. So when I'm saying oh, ku, oh, and here's my a little bit of legacy that needs to take into account. I know most of these already. In fact, that's how Duolingo starts most of the time. They try to stick to standalone kanji first. So they introduce the kun first. So whenever there's a word of vocabulary that I already know, since they already introduced the goal, right? Things, and then how okurigani works with their exceptions and all that stuff. You can retroactively take everything and go this way too. So this has already completed a cycle. Now when it gets to the third phase, how do we do this? And this creates creates an additional layer, right? Because these are in both directions. Depending on memory, how you do memory. So right now we're only going in one direction, and it's pretty okay. Like easily navigable for me. Something like this is probably how my mind really works. Like this is probably more normal. Thinking about it in both directions. However, in the case of WaniKani, it's much more simplified. So the thing, even then, because I used Duolingo before, this is actually a little bit more complicated than someone who initially only uses WaniKani. So I have been going this way a bunch of times, like back and forth. So that took a little bit of adjustment. And now I can do both. So it's actually really, really helpful. It's nice. It didn't take a long time to adapt. Now most of the time is the dot dot dot, right? It's the dot 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 special case. So when you guys were correcting me again, of course, this is a special case. And special cases are where the magic happens. I like special cases. So in this case, whether I'll get this right or wrong tomorrow is not dependent on what I write here. Isn't to be sufficient because yes, no, it's to add something. Oh, sorry. Oh, sorry. I wrote the wrong character. Yeah, you're right. This one. My bad. I wrote the wrong ending. Again, you are doing the same thing again. Hypercorrecting. But yes, it's that to make sufficient to add something. Yes, again, hypercorrection. Whether I make the error or not, it's if I make the error, then you're being pedantic. Yeah, pretty much. If you're constantly correcting the thing for me, then I'm not actually doing the correcting myself. Yep. You're gonna hear me say that lots and lots of times. And then we have this. Mieru was a definition problem. I got kicked too because that's what you started with. I was curious about your opinion with your previous. I think I had more growing pains than other people. It was both a pro and a con. I had to adapt to going back and forth beforehand. I'm still doing that, by the way. So in order to make time for Yakuza, right? In order to make time for Yakuza, Pirate Yakuza on peak day, right? The level up day, I actually skipped a lot of this. And immediately the following day, I had 6 errors that were vocabulary related. And those were new vocabulary. So I didn't have enough practice going from this to this and remembering the exceptions in order to get the right reads. And it led me into trouble. So yeah, it takes a little bit. I actually didn't think of it this way. And because of the way Duolingo does it, it's often kun first and on. Unless they're items. And then when they're items, you remember them in isolation because there's no relation between them, right? Because Duolingo doesn't distinguish between kun and on. And I love this about WaniKani. WaniKani, if there's anything, a selling point for WaniKani is, do you care about onyomi or kunyomi? Do you have enough rote memory to remember the reads as is and in context? Then that's great. Do you want to know the quote-unquote grammar, the pedantic categorization of reads in Japanese? WaniKani is your man, like ko is your man by transference. I think it's incredibly useful. This is like learning grammar to me. And yeah, sure enough, this is probably the most low effort way of remembering things, looking at recognizable patterns. When it comes to Duolingo, all of it was association based. So they had to sound, look, and or mean related to each other in some way in order to remember which read it is. So in that way, that's a part of something that WaniKani doesn't use. It doesn't use that. So what is lacking, I guess, if you call this a lack, what is not there by design in WaniKani is you don't have a higher level of association. So what I mean by that is it's not higher as in better, is higher as in different. Like this type of association where like you might be saying, oh, I made an error here because Churn likes to correct people. And you made a correction here. It's like, but together I would not make that error. Right? So the difference here is, even if I make these error, do I make the error when it matters? Probably not. Or if I do, then that's an important thing that I need to know, right? That's kind of one of the things that makes me very dismissive of people, because I knew the right answer. I also knew the right answer here, but I'm not responsible for knowing the right answer yet. And that is something that can be absent when you're self-studying with other people. When you're, or technically this wouldn't be constituted as self-studying anymore. And when you're self-studying, are you observing these things, right? Most of the time, I would say a vast majority of people would say no, they don't observe these when self-studying, because they only care about the right answer. What I mean by that is, they don't know why they made these errors, because it's being corrected for them. It's a point that may or may not be important to other people, because if it's right, it's right. That's perfectly all right, right? By the way, in case isn't clear, I do this for Duolingo, and I look back at the end of my streams after 1 month period. Like for example, many times people have corrected my constructs on Duolingo at the beginning and at the end, right? But I look back on them. It's like correcting your notes. If you don't do it yourself, in my opinion, that defeats self-studying, right? But hear me out. I am streaming this, so we correct it when we correct it. I just wanted you guys to know that I don't, like, I mentioned these things the next day or the following day. It's like, oh, hey, by the way, guys, I remember writing this. It's not this. Because tomorrow, the first thing I do tomorrow is I'm going to go over this again, right? I go over my mistakes at the beginning and end of my streams. So for people who are not here for the beginning or the end, which kind of I don't know what else I could do, right? Because the middle is often not what you expect people would be interested in. Beginning and end, we do this more than once, right? We do this more than once. To be fair to you, it's not really about knowing On and Kun for the sake of knowing. It's more about having a tool at your disposal, such as the Jukuko rule, which don't always work but are fun to play with. Interesting. It's not really about knowing On and Kun for the sake of knowing. It's more about having tools at your disposal. Yeah. Yep. Having options, right? Increasing your options. It's not about, I'll extend my empathy for that. It's not about whether Duolingo works better or worse than Anki. It's about having another tool to learn and engage with the Japanese language. Right? So before someone else comes in and say, hey, if you're using WaniKani, Anki is better. Maybe. We'll get to Anki. But for now, WaniKani is a different way to interact with Japanese, and Duolingo is too. So it's not about knowing or doing the best way. It's about having options. And sure enough, that doesn't stop me from playing a video game and someone else's take on this genre, and then someone else's take on the genre. So if you like your FromSoft to be FromSoft and continue to be FromSoft, then yeah, stick with Anki. I'm a guy who plays a FromSoft game, and now I'm curious what Supergiant's FromSoft is like, or Neo is like, or Team Ninja, like Team Ninja's version, or Platinum Games version. They're different ways. having more tools to look at different things, right? Because it's not as fun to not play around with. And that's kind of same thing, same but different, but same thing. Yeah, and this is to be visible. And here's last home take about this. Why do I have this perspective? Like, I can explain why I have this type of perspective. It's because I collect perspectives. I like collecting perspectives. So when you how do you fix a mistake? If your answer is to correct it, then you do not necessarily understand what I'm asking. How do you fix a mistake? To correct it is not an explicit enough answer to explain how you correct a mistake. Because if you think it's correcting a mistake, then telling the person the right answer is probably the way that works all the time, right? Is that how it works? I don't think so. At least I don't think so. I understand what you're saying. It's great that you do your due diligence. It still requires some restraint not to point out when you write something wrong on the screen. Yeah, but hear me out. It's the chicken or the egg question. When it requires a lot of restraint, the question is, how often do other people restrain around you in correcting your mistakes? And also, how often do you do it? Because if you do it very often, then yeah, I have no problems believing you that it requires a lot of restraint. It does not require a lot of restraint from me. And hear me out, that comes with its pros and cons, right? It comes with its pros and cons. I don't usually go out of my way and be incentivized or have an urge to correct someone else because I trust that they can correct it themselves. How is that also have a con? What happens when that person doesn't know how to correct it for themselves? Right? So I also have to make a compromise, and it can be considered as apathetic or not caring. So I have a compromise for that. Usually I would tell them and encourage them to exercise due diligence, and that's my compromise. So instead of telling them the correct answers or eliciting a propensity to correct them, I typically use upstream effectors in encouraging the person to exercise habits that deal with due diligence. My own compromise, personally, right? So if you ever make an error around me, I'm not there to correct you. I'll find some other way to get you to reflect on what you said, and then maybe you yourself discover an alternative way. Like, for example, this could be considered as indirect, beating around the bush. Like when someone tells me, oh yeah, Anki is the best app, right? Anki is the only thing you need to learn Japanese. Well, I would ask them, why do you think that? Like, what has Anki done for you? And if they go on to explain things, I'm like, so now that you've told me what Anki does, where can I get how does Anki teach me this thing? I'm interested in it teaching me this thing. I didn't say they were wrong or right or that they're short-sighted or something. I'm genuinely asking a question about how that works for someone else, right? Because now this person is offering me advice, right? So now that they offered their point of view, how do you get that person to understand that they're not offering advice for themselves? They're offering advice to someone else. And if you're offering advice to someone else, wouldn't you need to know what their point of view is? Right? So I didn't correct them or go out of my way to be pedantic and point out that, well, I don't care about that. It doesn't do these things. Instead, I rather prefer to encourage them to do their due diligence, to understand that whatever they're advising, you have to understand the other person's point of view first in order to provide advice. I gave them the privilege, I suppose. I asked them and gave them their moment to explain how it works for them, right? However, if so, that I asked them their question and then they explain it to me, having my interest in mind, then that is a winner. That is advice that I'm looking for. If they don't, then I can take their advice and find uses for it without necessarily needing to talk to them anymore, right? I wouldn't say you correct people often. I really don't. Here we are explicitly in a learning process, so I definitely have a somewhat different mindset when discussing the topic we're learning. Okay, hear me out here. You wouldn't say you correct people often, but you explicitly correct people often in a particular environment. So I would still say it's often in an environment that's qualified. And we just happen to share that environment. So, yes, I probably agree with you that most people don't correct people often over the course of their life, but I think that would be beyond the scope of this situation. So here, explicitly, you are overcorrecting, in my opinion, or have a tendency to often correct people in a learning process. So it's a very selective condition. And operating under that, I'm offering an alternative perspective. In a learning process, I would do the opposite. So we explicitly have different preferences. Overall, I would say most people don't correct people often across the majority of their life in general, right? I would totally agree with you that you probably do not correct people often, relatively speaking, somehow. I don't think people often have the position to be able to do that in their lives, like on a bigger scope of things. But explicitly, we're talking about the learning process. You do know some people who will correct you about seemingly everything all the time. Oh, and I was talking about the people around you too. So like your environment as well, right? Because the people around you also affects your tendencies. I don't have a lot of people around me that often corrects other people. So it goes with the territory. Whether it's good or bad, I don't see it as good or bad, honestly. I think it's fun talking about these things, right? Sometimes it would be interesting to be surrounded by people who seemingly corrects everything and see how I interact with them. At the moment, I don't tend to have that because those people tend to leave. Like, what I mean is, even if I'm being transparent here about our interactions here about correcting, which me in turn has multiple of these occurrences already, even prior to WaniKani, the thing is, if you're still here, that's the best part, right? We got to know about each other and come to an understanding versus those who aren't here anymore. And I can guarantee you that there's a far more bodies than you might expect. Figurative bodies, obviously. This has happened already like 20 to 30 times. And those people move on. Lots of them have careers in which they do correct other people. So that kind of makes sense. Right. Does it always work out? No, it doesn't always work out for me either. So you can kind of see what that would do if you're like raising a child, for example. Sometimes I have to understand that corrective measures are quick and efficient. You can't be like this loosey-goosey kind of person all the time, right? Anyways, I think language learning presents a really fun fun experience that allows for different mindsets, especially self-studying mindsets. I wouldn't think this is acceptable in formal education, if you know what I mean. Like, you got it wrong, so you lose points. It's not like you can say, oh, I was thinking about that, and you get points for it. Or can you? Self-studying is fun. I'll just take my time learning Japanese. Do you though, Ern? Because no one pressures you. Do you though? Sorry, this is a little bit of, I'm being a little cheeky, but I think you provide plenty of pressure on yourself, and your urgency, in my opinion, to correct and be pedantic is pressure enough. What you mean, do you though? I think you already place enough pressure on yourself for learning Japanese. So I'm not entirely convinced that you take your time learning Japanese. Like, what I mean is, it doesn't track that you wouldn't wait for someone else to correct their own mistakes if you yourself think it's fun and you take your time learning Japanese. Well, you're about to leave, but not because I'm vexed, simply because it's time for me to go to bed. Yeah, I was gonna end with our end of our discussion, right? Maybe a little pressure because seeing other people good in Japanese. Yeah, that's kind of what I think, Churn. I actually think you place a lot of pressure on yourself because of other people, and it's not because other people are pressuring you, but I think the correct, like, when you're really pedantic and stuff, you want that pressure. So it's not a bad or a good thing, right? Just something I kind of learned about you lately. Yeah, thanks, Gecko. Hopefully you get back to 100%. I don't know if you ever feel 100%. I usually keep saying like 98 and 99%, but stay safe, you know, stay healthy. Good luck. I would love to hear more about your idiosyncrasies with civilization or like some other topic, right? Good night, moonlight. Interesting. All right, so that's a great way to end our discussion. Lots of friendly challenges. Oyasumi nasai, Gecko. Oyasumi nasai. Oh, is that what that is? Really? It ends up being... Oh, yes. Oh, no, I know what you mean now. I totally what you mean now. Okay, 14 out of 10 for your early reference. Your early reference. Refer to him as Gekko. Yeah. You're right. I should get used to that. Maybe I should also what was the other one? Gaiko. Right? So we're just gonna have to throw in Gaiko and Gekko from now on. Wait till we get some churn. I don't know how churn is gonna work. All right, folks, that's a wrap. Fun stuff. If you're only here for WaniKani, right, and Japanese learning lesson, it's the end of our Japanese learning session for today. We still got a while, like 6 or 7 days of chill reviews, like heckin' chill reviews. WaniKani has told me that SRS is so chill. All of this said and done, you know, errors, mistakes, I can kind of see the attraction, like the final opinion, like maybe like a tentative opinion here. SRS is very comfy. Like it's a point where even if you make errors, I know how this is gonna sound, but I can totally understand how one can end up trusting in the SRS system. Like, if you make an error, it's there, right? Like, it does do a lot of things. And I have a silver lining for this. That's a silver lining for this. For me, I like being able to do it myself too. So it might seem a little redundant. I would actually even probably argue that if there are WaniKani users out there who's looking at what I'm doing right now, it's like, why are you doing this? That's extra work. It's a waste of time, right? Because the system already does that for you. They track the mistakes and whatnot. Like, yeah, agreed. So if you have no interest in using any of these skills, learning how to track your own mistakes and writing this stuff out, all the power to you. This is part of my routine. SRS didn't exist. You know, this type of SRS system didn't exist when I was growing up. Is it cool? It's really convenient. Like, if there's anything I can say that's bias from my prior experience, so my previous experience with learning and stuff, is that all of this is interference with what I do. So, some people are discovering this for the first time, or some people might think this is compartmentalized from the way they used to learn, and it's a new thing. It's a thing that they're learning from scratch. And I totally get why it's so good. Like, it's so convenient. Anki is very convenient, right? Like, by extension, SRS is incredibly convenient. And I feel it too. I also don't stop doing all the things that I've already done. Like, how do I take notes before? If I went to college and learn things, I learned to take notes and do things and trust myself to correct and have due diligent safeties and whatnot. That's because it was a time when I did all of these things. And oftentimes I don't like to throw my skills away. So it'll be redundant. I'll probably do a lot of redundant things with a tool. And the answer before someone says you're wasting your time spending extra time when you could be spending your time best using something else or something like that, it's like, well, yes and no. Are you practicing that skill or you're not, right? Some people would say things like, well, your time is best spent doing something else that's more efficient. Like, well, yes, unless the whole point of doing it is to do it that way. So, not to sound a little antagonistic, but this is the type of discussion. What leads to my discussion with Gecko and Churn, like, for example, on a daily basis, is because this is for fun. Nothing is pressuring me, right, Churn? Nothing is pressuring us except ourselves. So unless there's someone that tells you you have to learn Japanese or else you can't function in life or be successful, let's be safe and say that most of the pressure sources and dissatisfaction is coming from the self. And that can be a very powerful thing. There are people who are incredibly hard on themselves in order to drive them forward. I am too, but I know I'm doing it. So it's not a bad thing. I'm not angry at myself because I have these emotions like, oh man, why can't I do this now? Right? Kind of thing. Or why can't I stop making these errors? We work on it. Yeah, 话语的时间 了. Yeah. It's time for Chinese. All right, folks. There you have it. If you're gonna watch this later, arigatou gozaimasu. Right? Until next time, 皆さん, mata ne. I am gonna quickly go take a bathroom break and stretch a little bit. I'll be back for Hanzo Hero. Thank you.